All right. Good. Good morning, everyone. I was practicing to say good afternoon, but it's very agile. So, good morning. I'm Niels. Hello, all the way from the Netherlands. Just a quick introduction of me and my company. So that's me, Niels. I'm a published novelist as well as a writer for video games, at least that's what I did in the past. Together with Lennart, my co-founder, who is a designer and developer, we founded Immer in the Netherlands. What we built is a technology that can take all these existing EPUBs, and just now I heard that we'll be able to do PDFs in the future as well, process them and create a whole new mobile reading experience out of it. And our business model is that we then license that technology to basically anyone who brings books to readers, whether it's for leisure or for education or for work. But I'm not going to talk about the company a lot today, maybe a little, because it's about the last 10 years, all the research, all the ideas that have led up to the company, the product that we're selling. And I will go through these 3 projects that I worked on over the last 10 years. Lotus was my sort of initial prototype where it all got started. Then around 2020, we founded the company and made a test app in the Netherlands. And then after that, it got a little bit more serious. We got a little bit more funding, and we started building the Immer reader that we're doing right now, the real Immer app. Couple of starting points that got me thinking about all of this, just so we have a kind of shared reference, a frame of reference for as far as we didn't have that already. So the first one, reading long-form text on the phone is a poor experience, and it doesn't use many of the capabilities of those devices. Coming from the games industry, this is what got me really frustrated 10 years ago, when one of my novels was published as an EPUB for the first time. And I thought it could be so much more interesting, and I started thinking about how to do that. Started researching it, started talking to a lot of people in the Netherlands, mostly at the beginning, and it grew from that. And some of the interesting things that got me started even more were things like this. People remember less when reading from the screen versus paper. Why is that? What can we do about it using design solutions? Enriched multimedia makes ebooks attractive for new audiences. It does work like that, but the return on investment is low, and on top of that, that kind of multimedia keeps people from deep reading. People don't like the hidden UI of page flipping book apps. Do I press left? Do I press right? What happens when I press in the middle? How should I know this? You have to learn it. It doesn't make intuitive sense. Scrolling is a lot more intuitive, but it tends to work really well to scan content and not really to read it well, which is what we would want, especially as a novelist or some kind of writer. And finally, this general sense that to a lot of people, actually books can be quite scary, and people are overwhelmed, especially as the books get a little bit bigger. So these were just some of the things that I was thinking about when I started going into this whole topic. And that led me to a project called Lotus, which was an app novella written specifically for this format, with some multimedia elements just for that. And it started out quite ambitious, quite rich, quite complex, and it grew more subtle as we developed it, as we were testing things. Like I wanted to have this rich symphonic soundtrack, and we just noticed that the more complex it was, the harder it became to focus on the text, and we wanted people to focus on the text. So we noticed that the more subtle it got, the better it actually worked to get people to read. And things like ambient color, simple ambient audio, and those kinds of things worked. And also this animation here, it's hard to see in this light, but it's the lotus of the title of the story that grows as you read more chapters. So each chapter basically is a leaf in this flower. We show it just in between the chapters, and it helps you get a sense of the progress you're making. To do this, we built a simple plain text script format that binds bits of text to multimedia elements. So we had this layered audio system, basically loops of audio that you could turn on or off or make louder or softer depending on where you were in the text. So no matter what the progress in the story was, it always fit that moment. And similarly, color was connected to these blocks as well, and also had a meaning in the story. So when the screen turned blue, you knew, oh, I'm with this character, I'm in this situation. I already told you about these animated breaks. I didn't just try to make something that only the phone can do, but also something that fits with how people use the phone. And so we had portions of text that fit the screen, that had the benefit, it seemed to work quite well to focus people on a small bit of text, read that, tap, go to the next. But that also allowed me to have a lot of control over the reading experience. So if I follow small sentences with maybe some bigger paragraphs, that really allowed me to control kind of the experience of reading. Chapters were meant to fit lost moments. If you were in the train or in the waiting room, you should be able to read a chapter. And it was meant as a feature-length experience as well. So you could read it in one sitting, in one evening, if you wanted to. I would say it was quite a successful experiment. It worked as an enhanced experience that doesn't distract from the text. So it used those possibilities without sort of being all in your face and making you not focus on the text. And we got a lot of good feedback. The writer Robin Sloan said that he was impressed and grateful, which was great, but also from like less experienced readers, we got a lot of interesting feedback, like I've forgotten how to read books, but this app helped me do it. And that had to do with those short bits of text a lot. And really like thinking about how do people read on the phone and coming up with these kinds of the small bits of content. But the general feeling was also, okay, this worked pretty well, but it was a ton of work. We worked on this for years, and just getting the audio right was so much work. So how can you ever scale that to more books? It's really not possible. But we got thinking about some of these bits of it, and like these small parts of text. What can we automate here, and can we do that for more books in an automatic way instead of making it all custom? And that is what led to the founding of Immer. So back in 2020, we released the first Immer app with about 200 books at first, working with a lot of publishers in the Netherlands, mostly fiction, some non-fiction as well. And because obviously we couldn't control the shape of those books, some chapters would be longer, but we did create something to let people have a reading session that fit the moment. So we created what we call the session tuner, which was like a radio tuner for those who used radios like that back in the day, and it basically sort of defaulted to chapter ends and paragraph breaks. So you would know that you always had a good stopping point. For example, when you would want to read for 15 minutes, it would stick to that. The text was portioned automatically. We felt that with no economic reason to fill the screen as much as possible, we could prioritize sort of the cohesion of the text, so there would never be half sentences on the screen. And we really saw in our research that that helped people focus on each piece of text before they progress to the next. And when the paragraph was too long for the screen, we would break it off with a special typographic mark, and that seemed to work quite well to communicate that actually the reading still went on until the next screen. Another benefit was that because of this system, automatically the different portions would have different sizes. And going back to that research that people remember less when reading from a screen, we thought that this would be one thing that might help people. When each chunk of text has a different shape, that might help to make them more unique and make them stick out more, so you might remember them a little bit more. We haven't been able to prove that, but it seems to work quite well that way. We also just thought it looked quite cool, more like an Instagram story, more like something you would do on the phone. And this was also certainly a goal at the beginning, to target those sort of struggling readers, hesitant readers, dormant readers. In this app, we didn't just have a new way of portioning text, but also a new way of navigating text, where we try to combine the best of pagination with the best of scrolling, with kind of adjacent portions that are hidden until you navigate, where you just tap to go to the next, and if you want, you can drag between them, which works quite well. This was received quite well in the testing that we did. About 88% of the surveyed people say they prefer this to regular ebooks. And as many as 100% of those we talked to said they would want to read more books in this way, which encouraged us to go on. And we even did a joint study with a Dutch university that confirmed these findings, that indeed these kinds of design solutions lead to a better reading experience. But there was also still a lot to improve on. With this format, we found that, as much as some people like this, for some it was too little text on the screen. For others, it was still too much. So this goes back to that idea that a one-size-fits-all solution is not the way to go. We have to be more flexible. And this was a problem with the way we had set up this first app, because we really didn't have a way to adjust font sizes, try more creative ideas. Also, this idea of sessions, especially the way we did it, every time you started reading, you had to set a session. Every time you finished that session, you had to rate it and then set another session to go on. This was quite divisive. Some people loved it, but most people said, I don't want to use this, at least not every time that I read. So that was also something to work on. And then I think the most interesting thing is that, as well as these portions work to focus the attention on that particular bit of text, it increases a problem that you have on this small screen, where there is less context of where you are in the book, and that problem is increased. So that was something that we wanted to work on. So these ideas all went into the work on the new iteration of what we call the Immer Reader that we started working on last year. So the Immer Reader is a super smooth and highly flexible text engine, sort of informed by that experience with the first app. because this makes it a lot easier to experiment with design ideas, to experiment with different styles for different readers, offering them potentially even dynamically, maybe also not just based on the preference of the reader, but maybe also on the content, right? A different book might need a different reading experience. And this flexible engine also allowed us new possibilities to think about improving that context problem. So about this content problem, I'm sure you're all familiar with this kind of thinking. And with the paper book, there are so many ways to kind of infer context. How far am I in the book? Where am I on a spread of pages? What is the author trying to say in terms of the structure of paragraphs? And also you see the end of a chapter coming up from quite a long ways. That gives you a lot of information about what you're reading, how it's structured, how you're meant to interpret it as a reader. Well, you lose a lot of this in the digital context, especially on that tiny screen. So for the high-level context, we worked on this tool called the Book Navigator that's shown here at the side, that shows you the shape of each chapter. So you see how long the chapters are, and of course your position in it. Also some tiny breaks within those chapters that are section breaks, so bigger chunks within the chapter. And you actually see those in the progress ring at the bottom as well. So you see where the breaks are. We try to give you a sort of more physical sense of what the text looks like beyond this portion that you're seeing right now. The Book Navigator is also a UI element, so you can flip through it, see the size of the book, scrub through it, tap to go to a chapter if you want to navigate non-linearly. So yeah, this works quite well, but I think that the lower level context stuff is a somewhat bigger challenge. And for that we came up with what we call break markers. So here you see a break marker showing that this is actually the end of a bigger section. And importantly, we don't just show that you're at the end of a section, but also that you're at the beginning of one. And similarly here at the corner, you see that the end of a chapter is coming up. So that corresponds as well with the beginning of the chapter. Those kind of communicate. As we were building this stuff, we thought we could do a lot more with it as well. So thinking about these different target audiences, this is a more traditional view, looks a lot more like a traditional novel. We also worked on what we call a modern style, meant more for people who have less experience reading. And actually here, we basically show sentences as if they were paragraphs. We noticed while testing that actually we like this a lot as well. It really fits with this fun format. A big chunk of text is just overwhelming, even to a practiced reader, and it's quite nice. Of course, there's a problem that if everything looks like a paragraph, how do you know that there's a paragraph? How do you know that basically an author is taking a longer break? So we created another marker for that to say, there's a longer break here. And then, of course, when there's a new chapter section, there's another bigger marker for that. I'm going to try to quickly show this live. Switch around here. There we go. This is the part of the book. Then you go to, skipping around a little bit. So the app is in early access now. If you go to our website, immer.app, you can subscribe to our waitlist, and every week we allow some people into the test and you can actually upload EPUBs that you already own to try this reading experience. Let's see. Yeah, you just tap to go to the next bit of text, and then when you drag, you can see that they're actually connected, and so it allows the sort of staticness of a page, but also the dynamism of scrolling, which is a good combination. And then here you see the little paragraph break that sort of moves along with you when you scroll and communicates that there's a bigger break going on here. And then any text can always just be switched to between modern and traditional styles right now, but working on other ideas as well. And here you see that it looks more like a traditional book, and here are these markings that show that this paragraph is still going on. That also moves along with it, and if you sort of scroll like this, you see them like smoothly moving between these two states. So that's just a quick demo of what we're working on, just in time as well, because it says here that it's time to wrap up. I'm going to do that if I find my cursor and can show you the last slide. Yeah, there we go. So it's already working quite well. There's a lot more to explore. We want to try more styles, more ideas for these kind of typographic breaks. We think that transitions are key, right? You're reading one paragraph, then you don't want to be distracted by anything. But in this moment, when you're moving between two bits, that is an opportunity to do interesting transitions, do stuff with color, do maybe audio that's changing. And we think a lot more flourishes are possible here. We are working on making color procedural, so we already use like the color from the cover of the book right now to inform the layouts, but we can do, we think, a lot with like genre and sentiment analysis, and the same for audio. So we tried a lot with these sort of meditative soundtracks. What if they respond to the type of paragraph you're reading, the type of book that you're reading? Basically, we are flowing everything from the EPUB into this convenient format for the phone, and we want to think out of the box for elements like sidebars and quotes, images, footnotes as well. And because we process them this way, we have a lot of freedom to try new stuff. And finally, we don't want to just work on this ourselves, but really work together with artists as well to create new styles for all books, for specific kinds of books, but for individual titles as well. And the goal ultimately would be to, on top of this technology, build a flexible, easy editor that designers could work with to create new kinds of reading experiences. That's it, thank you.